Hi, everyone. My name is Chad Gallinat from Conservation X Labs. I'm the Foundry Director here at Conservation X. Um, so I oversee the open innovation activities that we're a part of that we run. Um, really excited to have the folks online today to provide some deep dive insights onto how the challenge is being run and some pointers on how to really deliver a really strong application. Um, Really quickly, I just want to kind of highlight why we're implementing this competition and our partners. So, the Nature Intelligence for Business Grand Challenge, it's a global initiative, so led by Conservation X Labs in partnership with the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD for short, and the United Nations Development Program, so UNDP for short. It's all funded by the government of Germany's International Climate Initiative, IKI. This challenge really is looking to unlock scalable solutions that can enable small and medium enterprises, SMEs, to better assess, manage their interactions with nature using nature intelligence aligned with the TNFD LEAP approach. Part of the reason why we're running this challenge is because large corporations are increasingly relying on SME suppliers to provide this sort of data, nature-related data, and performance insights for their reporting. And so the problem is SMEs, often have barriers in assessing and disclosing their nature-related dependencies, risks, impacts, opportunities. And so what we really want to do is encourage, incentivize innovators like yourselves to really provide groundbreaking solutions that can help SMEs deliver this type of nature intelligence. So that's kind of why we're running the challenge, and just wanted to kind of provide that framing for the challenge and why we're getting into this deep dive webinar. So, real quick, the agenda, introductions. Doing that right now. We're going to get some competition details and how to apply. We're really going to go into some of those details with Cassie, program manager, and then we're going to hear some remarks and insights on how to make a really strong application for this from Zung Nguyen from UNDP. And then we're going to have a ton of time for questions and answers at the end. Real quickly, so I'm your moderator, Chad Gallinat from Conservation X Labs again, Foundry Director overseeing open innovation activities here. Really excited to have Cassie Hoffman, our Global Development Innovation Lead. She's managing the day-to-day activities of this challenge, so knows this thing inside and out. And then Zung Nguyen will come in as our final speaker to talk about our product lead from Digital for Planet UNDP to talk about how to strengthen your application, thinking about scale, etc. With that, I will pass the mic over to Cassie to go into the competition details. Cassie, take it away.
Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you all might be. My name's Cassie Hoffman, and I'm the Global Development and Innovation Lead at Conservation X Labs, helping manage this competition. And I think it's an exciting day to be talking about the Nature Intelligence for Business Grand Challenge as COP30 gets kicked off in Belém in the heart of the Amazon. And kind of taking stock on where we are on a global and macro level on climate change, managing our nature resources and conservation. So I think this is at a macro level at the heart of why we're calling businesses to consider their nature-related issues and thinking about how we're seeing the decline of biodiversity and the extinction rates increasing at higher rates than any time in human history. We're seeing collapses of wildlife populations. And we know there's increasingly strains on ecosystem services and the types of services that society as a whole and also specifically businesses depend on for products, revenue, and their business performance. Things like the provision of timber and water, pollination, flood control. A lot of these ecosystem services are in decline or under strain. And so, many actors, NGOs, governments, but we're also looking to businesses to try to be more thoughtful and more resourceful in how we manage or our natural resources. If you can go to the next slide, Chad. So we've seen increasingly, led by one of our partners and many others, and the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, really starting to look at how we can encourage businesses to be more considerate of their nature-related issues. As Chad mentioned, their nature dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities, and thinking about how they can manage them better, and also use business strategies and opportunities to also look at how we really build and support nature positive economies. How can we sustain these for future generations? And turning to something that we've dubbed nature intelligence. So like turning these nature related insights into business action. And while many corporates and big businesses around the world, are committing to nature-related disclosures, are looking to manage their raw material inputs on longer time frames, and how they can make sure they're sustainable and on the longer term. We see on the flip side that it is challenging for small and medium-sized enterprises to do so, that they have constraints with capacity, time, resources, and maybe to a certain extent scientific or nature expertise to really do this in a way that big businesses and corporates are starting to invest in. And we see that collectively, while big businesses and corporates may individually make up large percentages of revenues, employment, and sales, we see collectively that SMEs also make up a very large percentage of businesses, sales and revenue and employment, even if any one individual, makes maybe a smaller contribution and or impact. So this is the framework that we were working, or the problem that we're looking to address in launching the Nature Intelligence for Business Grand Challenge, and also recognizing, as Chad mentioned at the top, that businesses and corporations are also increasingly relying on SMEs and their providers, their small and medium-sized providers and suppliers to provide this type of sustainability data and nature-related data so that they can meet their disclosure requirements. If we go to the next slide. So on October 3rd, just a little over a month ago, we launched the Nature Intelligence for Business Grand Challenge in partnership with UNDP and TNFD, and with backing from the German government's International Climate Initiative, to make the call for solutions that enable small and medium-sized enterprises around the world to better assess and act on their nature-related dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities. And the competition is open now, and the application deadline is Monday, December 15th, 2025. I saw a question and noted that we did recently extend the deadline, mainly because we will be offering a number of webinars on the LEAP approach, which is the TNFD preferred nature assessment methodology. And so they wanted to provide the opportunity to detail and hear from their experts on this methodology, for applicants to have the opportunity to ask them questions directly and have a deeper understanding of it. And so we'll be announcing those shortly, but we'll be holding 2 webinars on November 20th and 24th to really review that LEAP methodology in detail. Thanks. And I'll just say you can go to nature-intelligence.org if you um, want to learn more about the competition from the website, but also to access the Innovator Handbook, which I recommend everyone review if they are thinking about applying. The Nature Intelligence for Business Grand Challenge sets what I think are ambitious goals and parameters for the solutions to serve SMEs. And we really defined a number of parameters that we think will help SMEs really overcome some of these typical adoption barriers or the reasons that they're not regularly accessing nature intelligence. Things like maybe not having um, access to state of nature data, don't have access to it in an organized way, don't have the time and resources or capacity to um, both run or conduct the nature assessment, but also to act and implement on any findings or outcomes. So we outlined a number of different parameters for applicants to think about as they prepare their applications, thinking about how solutions might be intuitive. Oh, Chad, you're pulling up a different. Okay. Um, Intuitive and ready or require minimal training to deploy, potentially be available in multiple languages, provide easy and actionable outputs, require minimal nature expertise or scientific knowledge to conduct or act on, relatively ready to use out of the box and um, not requiring overly amount of time or resources to conduct setup and get started. Ideally able to operate in limited connectivity environments, at least, or allowing to operate in limited connectivity and doing uploads or processing later. Accessible from mobile devices or iPads, etc. And also thinking creatively about how to make the tool accessible and potentially to be adopted by hundreds, if not or thousands, if not millions of users. Next slide. I'll give a brief overview of the evaluation criteria. Again, really encouraging people to review the Innovator Handbook and also recognizing that I think Zung will also talk a bit about the evaluation criteria when thinking about design. But I'd say because the most important design criteria is on design inclusion and solution fit. And so really thinking about how solutions serve the needs and or solve a problem specifically for the SMEs, provide business value and tangible value to the users and customers of the solution. Another significant criteria is the accuracy and reliability. So do the solutions produce reliable outputs that are accurate and scientifically sound, and also currently or have the potential in the future to align with the TNFD LEAP approach. The next criterion, innovation and differentiation, is mostly how your solution may differ or have a competitive advantage over the other solutions that exist out in the landscape. The scalability and applicability criteria, mostly thinking about how the solution can be potentially adopted by, like I said, many users or different types of customers. The financial sustainability and business model, just thinking about how your team and organization can sustain revenue and or funding, be it from sales or other philanthropy or revenue source to continue to provide the solution over time. And then lastly, the feasibility, considering like any legal or capabilities of the tech or what the advantages or disadvantages of the use of AI may be, and the collective expertise and implementing capability of your team. So moving forward. I mentioned that the competition launched on October 3rd. We're currently in the open application period, and that will close on December 15th. We will screen applications for eligibility and evaluate them with a panel of experts from UNDP, TNFD, and CXL, and a number of other like and trusted external experts to develop a short list of 8 to 10 finalists that we will announce in late January. Those 8 to 10 finalists will be, or 8 to 10 finalists will be provided a $5,000 stipend and an invitation to test their solution with a number of SMEs to actually demonstrate the performance and potential of their solution. We'll collect performance results from that testing period and conduct another evaluation and ranking of solutions to announce winners in April, looking to identify the top 3 performing solutions to offer $20,000 solution development grants. So if you go to the next slide, Chad. So I covered these financial incentives. There's currently a $100,000 funding pool offering, like I said, $5,000 stipends to the challenge finalists and $20,000 awards to the top 3 performing solutions at the end of the competition. But I do think like the real gravy and what should really attract people to this solution or to this competition is one, really, I think like the recognition, the opportunity to be identified as a leading tool in conducting nature assessments, and also to really tap and start a meaningful partnership with TNFD and UNDP as they look to and continue to encourage the adoption of TNFD guidelines, the use of the LEAP approach. We're looking for tools that can readily be used and deployed to help increase adoption and of the TNFD guidelines. So this is, a relatively short, compact competition with ambitious goals, but I do think of it as like the start of a partnership and not just a 6-month competition. Next slide, Chad. Eligibility, I'd say on the high level, we're looking for innovations that automate nature assessments and ideally the TNFD LEAP approach, make them cheaper, easier, and more accessible and easier to act on. Additionally, at the time of the application deadline, solutions need to be at least in a proof of concept stage. So do need to have like a pretty firm understanding of how your solution would work. And you must have a prototype ready by the end of January for testing. So we're trying to leave it relatively open, but know that like we will adhere strictly to like having a prototype ready by the end of January, at least. And existing solutions are also able to apply and compete. Applications can be submitted by individuals, organizations, businesses, associations, civil societies, again, from most countries around the world. And the only really limitation is that governments at any level are not eligible. Please reach out if you have like a pseudo like scientific government or institution, because we can clarify if there is for any reasons like questions. I know in some countries there are like government-backed scientific institutions that we don't necessarily want to exclude. So if there's any gray area, please reach out and we can help clarify eligibility. Okay, going forward. A quick flyover of the application. There are 2 parts. The first part just asks a number of general information about who you are, who you represent, how you learned about the competition, and just some short details about motivations and any awards or accelerators that you've received in the recent history. And that's mostly just to help us understand who our applicants are and how they hear about the competition and kind of enter the competition pipeline. They are not used for evaluating your solution. And next slide, Chad. And then the bulk of the application is the technical part. It does have 17 questions. 13 of them are technical questions that require probably paragraph type responses. So you do need to set a little bit of time to prepare this application. They are available to review in the Innovator Handbook if you don't want to click through the application form. And I think they probably are not too surprising as they line up relatively well with the evaluation criteria. But trying to understand your solution's design, the scientific integrity of the outputs, or how they're developed, what the business model or the adoption plan is, and what barriers you may see currently, and the team capacity and experience. Next slide, Chad. I think I only have one or two more. So I mentioned this because I think the competition is relatively ambitious, and I know there are a lot of great existing tools in the landscape of nature assessments. And I think even if you don't hit all of those how might we parameters, I think I do really encourage teams with solid solutions that do some aspect of the LEAP or a nature assessment or serve a specific community or geography to apply. Because we are, like I said, looking at this as a start of a partnership and want to think critically with serious and capable teams about how they can expand the capability and access to their tool. So I don't want people to be overwhelmed by requirements and think creatively about how the solution may be able to continue to evolve. We are really, while we know SMEs deliver sustainability data or reporting data to large corporations or big businesses, we do want the outputs to serve a value for the SMEs in and of themselves. So really looking for tools that can also provide specifically insights for SMEs, which I know sometimes can be challenging when they, maybe have a smaller footprint or the data resolution is not as quite as high as it may need for smaller operations. And then lastly, I do want applicants to really think of this as the start of a partnership, and really hoping that we continue to be able to work with the teams that go through the testing phase and really demonstrate a lot of potential to continue to see how we can best serve SMEs. We know we're kind of still at the forefront, very beginning of how we can really serve this community in a meaningful way. My last slide before I hand it over to Zung. Just some final tips for a strong application from the CXL side. One, there is a button to download the Innovator Handbook, and I do really recommend that you review that. There are requirements, insights, links that I think increase the probability of crafting a successful application and also identifying if your solution is in scope and eligible before you go through the trouble of applying. So please encourage people to go to the Challenge Competition website and download and review that. The first question on the application is, to provide a pitch or a short description of your innovation. And I would encourage people to have that pass the MOM test. I know sometimes these are very technical solutions or get deep into methodologies, but that first description should be pretty easy to interpret even by someone like your mom. They should understand what that solution does at a basic level when you make the initial description. And then I I see a lot in innovation in tech applications. Sometimes teams get really wrapped up in describing what their like how their solution works. And this is like the car mechanic versus the car salesman part. And they kind of describe like everything that's under the hood, which sometimes is, I think, is part of it. It's interesting. It gives your solution credibility and legitimacy, like you know what you're doing and it's not all smoke and mirrors. But we do also need to know like how it provides value and how that value like serves the customers and users. So um, really think about like when you read through your application, like what percentage is car mechanic describing how it works versus car salesman, like what it does for you, and meets like the motivations and needs of the users. And then lastly, we also always welcome any opportunity to like really support, have you had sales? Have you, do you have any numbers to back up the accuracy and reliability of your outputs? What is the like the rate of adoption of your solution? Any sort of data you can bring to back up your claims, we really appreciate and helps us gain confidence in your solution. So we know sometimes that's not always available, but also describing plans to how you plan to get such data can also be encouraging and reassuring to evaluators. So that's my part. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be available for questions, or you can write us at natureintelligence@conservationxlabs.org. I'll be around for questions after Zung's presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie. That was really useful. Super excited to have Zung Nguyen here from UNDP. I'm going to introduce her and then hand off the virtual mic to Zung. So at UNDP, Zung leads the development and scaling of open source digital platforms, things like national carbon registries, climate transparency systems, that really enable governments to implement their Paris Agreement commitments on climate finance and NDC reporting. Her work focuses on building the digital infrastructure that meets UNFCCC requirements, engaging stakeholders around setting shared global standards, deploying national carbon registries and carbon transparency systems, and then supporting national governments with capacity building and advisory services. With that, we're super excited to have her wisdom and thoughts to help bolster some of these applications. Zung, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for the great intro. So I guess my role today is really to provide some inspiration and really provocations and tips and strategies. And I'm someone with a product design background. Kind of as Chad mentioned here at UNDP, I'm kind of mainly working with governments on providing kind of government solutions. But I think before that, I've also had extensive experience doing innovation and business development for private sector, for SMEs as well. And so kind of glad to share some thoughts today. Of course, I think everything in the presentation is really just that, right? It's tips and tricks, and it's really questions meant to provoke. And I think one thing I want to, and having been in this position before, it's really overwhelming and it feels like a lot of requirements. And I guess one thing I have to say is you don't have to do everything. I say today, this is not part of the official kind of requirements. It's really just kind of inspirations. And so kind of going to the next slide, I really like how this challenge is framed. It's around designing for scale and it's designing for real world impact, right? And I think often in innovation challenges, we often see teams and people jump straight to tech or really feeling like, oh, to be innovative, the tech has to be groundbreaking, has to have the latest AI or blockchain or things like that. But really kind of what's really important here, it's really about real world use and adoption and getting real people on the ground to change the way they do behaviors and change the way that they do business in a way that kind of delivers better outcomes for those businesses as well as for nature and climate. And so that's kind of, the parameters for success we really want to encourage teams to think about. And when it comes to innovation, and we really want teams to think, and I'm sure most people have seen this before, it's a really standard kind of framework for product development. It's around desirability, technical feasibility as well as the viability of the solution. And, that's kind of the framework I'll use in the next slide to kind of talk through the presentation today. And what's nice is it aligns really nicely with kind of the way that the grading framework for the challenge has been created. So when we talk about desirable, it's really about, is it inclusion, the solution fit? Is it, differentiated? Is it unique? When we talk about technical feasibility, that really translates to that scalability as well as the accuracy and reliability. And lastly, when we talk about viability, it kind of also applies to the business model as well as the financial sustainability, as well as the team that will not just design, but also operationalize it, right? And so if we kind of go to the first section, you can skip through that slide. Next, please. Yeah, so really kind of that first question here is, why will people use this, right? And obviously TNFD have come with a LEAP framework, with a LEAP approach, but what we really want to see in the solutions that come forward is really the product market fit that really brings that to life, that really shows, like kind of answers that question of why would people care enough to use it, and what is the undeserved. And here we really want to see evidence of kind of you going out into the world, having talked to users and being able to identify the undeserved need that people or businesses might be having, their pain points, whether it's financial, operational, or legal, that this solution will solve. If we go into the next solution, next slide, a metaphor that I often like to use is that I think sometimes teams come and they talk a lot about their shovel, right? Like, this is what we've designed, it's high tech, but people don't want a shovel. They want a hole dug, right? They want an outcome. And this is where I really want to encourage teams to really think about what is that ultimate outcome for businesses. In the next slide, you will kind of see in the TNFD guidelines, there are already some really helpful areas of business performance. For example, markets or resource efficiency or capital flow or regulatory capital, kind of these broad areas of business outcomes. And I really like to encourage teams to go one level even lower than this and kind of boiling it down to the level of jobs to be done, or kind of, the outcome or the business process, and really kind of show, and even though the goal of this competition is about scale, this doesn't necessarily mean that, we expect you to deliver a solution that will fit every kind of business, or every kind of business in every single market globally. That's not necessarily scale. I think scale is really being able to identify and really size the market of users and their specific need, and show that there is a servable, addressable audience there that you can serve with your business solution. So hopefully that kind of helps demystify what we mean by scale. And going into the next slide, kind of another provocation when it comes to thinking through the problem and the solution is often in this area of kind of environmental reporting. It can feel really complicated and it can feel really overwhelming, in contrast to the setups of many SMEs that are really small or running with small operational budgets and likely have no environmental experts. So one kind of provocation that we want to make today is, how can we make these tools so simple that no consultants or no kind of experts around environmental science are needed to be able to complete this? So next slide, an example of similar, I'm sure you've all heard of Shopify. And this is, a massive kind of extremely successful startup. And what they've done is they've been able to take what was previously a very complicated task of setting up e-commerce businesses that required, knowing how to code, knowing law, knowing kind of tax regulations. And they've kind of created a platform that allows really anyone, like a single person, to be able to set up an online business and to be able to trade internationally by drawing on Shopify's kind of platform of products. And currently they have 5.5 million merchants in 175 countries. And obviously they didn't start with the entire platform straight away. They started, initially with just helping people set up kind of the shop funds. And so really kind of learning, I think what they've done extremely well is simplifying complexity and starting small. And I think what can we learn from that experience with the equivalent of nature-related performance and reporting to really be able to simplify something that was previously very technical and complex for small businesses. So kind of going from desirability to the next section of provocation around feasibility, how do we think through function and scale and also cost for the users, right? Because SMEs, they don't just have small teams, they also really have small budgets. And so some of the provocations is like, yeah, how can this work? For businesses that have really low operational costs? How can this work in areas that have, for example, low connectivity or low resources? How can we, I think, again, sometimes when it comes to innovation competitions, teams feel the need to, innovate by showing that they've done everything from scratch. They've kind of, made new, they've really invented the wheel, or they've kind of created a really proprietary solution, whereas actually that might be very complex and expensive and hard to maintain unless you kind of have the backing of a big corporation. um, uh, Sometimes innovation or actually solutions that are easiest to scale might be those that build on existing platforms or existing data sources or existing open source systems, because you're really benefiting from that kind of community and that collective knowledge and approach. And so that's something that we wanted to challenge or kind of inspire and provoke. And the other thing is, what is the especially for these data-driven challenges, often when you're relying on, global data sources, how can that be verified and kind of and be augmented with, for example, ground truth data and verification? Going to the next slide, thinking about different and especially with SMEs, thinking about the different levels of connectivity. And again, this is not a blanket rule. It really depends on the users and the market that you're choosing. So what are some of the accessibility constraints that market has? Are they mobile first? Are they offline access? Here, I think it's important not to kind of apply that blanket solution, but really kind of make the case for what are the technical constraints that are really mapped with the audience and the user segments that you're picking and the problem that you're trying to solve for that market. So to kind of give some example, and kind of the first example, it's actually from work that our team at UNDP has been doing. We've kind of been working with kind of many kind of governments and countries that are trying to manage kind of deforestation and forest traceability, and helping farms or kind of plot holders to be able to show over time how the piece of land or forest or farm that they're managing is kind of helping combat deforestation. And so what we've done is we've kind of created this open source tool that can be deployed in different countries. And the way that it works is it combines user generated polygon data. So different users can essentially upload to the tool their farm boundary. And if you go into the next slide, then they can select these different global forestry data sources, so satellite data showing kind of real-time deforestation data over time, and kind of between the kind of between kind of uploading their own plot boundaries, they can match that with the global data sets on deforestation to, if you go to the next slide, to kind of prove over time how that particular plot of land is performing. And that's kind of on the landholder scale, and on the government scale, that also allows governments to kind of build up over time this kind of geospatial, statewide or kind of area-wide map of all the different kind of plots that are being managed and how they're performing over time to be able to see that pattern. And so that's kind of an example of how we've kind of been able to rely on a mix of open source data sets while also generating new data sets that are ground truthed in, kind of farmer knowledge and kind of legal, the legal rights of the individual farm boundary. Another case study, something I've really kind of enjoyed, is I think this is an organization in Spain called Bio Agro, and in many countries, Spain included, farmers are expected to kind of input a lot of information to government and regulators around, kind of biodiversity and kind of the farm management and sustainability practices that are being used. And that can be really difficult with farmers who kind of for example, may have challenge interpreting what regulation means, and kind of being able to input data geospatially can be really hard. And there had been other solutions before who've created different kinds of farm logs. But what I thought was particularly interesting, I think this was last year, the startup has actually started to use WhatsApp and actually using a new kind of AI capabilities that was launched in WhatsApp to essentially program a natural language interface where farmers could actually essentially talk to the WhatsApp tool that would ask its questions, and they were able to essentially have this partnership with WhatsApp, and instead of building up a new chatbot from scratch, really kind of use something that all farmers have access to, and was easy to understand and easy to use. And that's kind of another example of actually scaling through existing platforms and partnerships. If you go to the next slide, lastly, we really want to kind of think about the business model. It's one of the criteria. And here I just wanted to introduce this kind of tool. If you aren't aware of it, business model canvas, you can find it online. It's really handy and really kind of has all of these different questions to help teams think through what their approach is. And business model might be through grants, it might be through partnerships, but what is the model for thinking through long-term operation and maintenance? What are the resources you have? What are the relationships with customers and segments? And I think it's a really nice framework to help teams think through a very structured way, going from their product, their value proposition and customers, to then the different streams of being able to monetize that. And lastly, I think this is the last slide, is when thinking of the multidisciplinary team, it's important to think of not just your team in design and build, but also team that will operationalize. And we want to see a really good mix of disciplines, not just software developers, but also people who understand data, who understand design, who understand kind of the business and environmental requirements. We want to see evidence of, for example, people who kind of know the market and have that customer relationship and maybe can lean into the sales and business side. Again, this is not a one size fit all. So kind of the team shape will really depend on, what you're proposing. And it doesn't mean that, but I think there are 6 bullet points on this screen. Doesn't mean that it has to be exactly this, or it has to be exactly 6 people, because you might have multiple people in software, or maybe someone can have multiple hats on, right? But the point is really like, what are the different skills that you need to be able to build this and run it, and then really kind of evidencing that in the application. And I think that's all I prepared. Yeah, I think actually there are a few more conclusion slides to bring it all together. So to bring it all together, really for us, designing for scale, it's really about solutions that have customer desirability, that are feasible to not just build, but also operate in the long term, and that are also viable and imaginable for a business to be able, because the last thing we want is for this competition to kind of have a lot of excitement and then for the solution to die because it can't be sustained. So for us, it's really about kind of building for long-term impact and the solution that really works for particular and can be scaled in very specific contexts. And if you go into the next slide, I think what was mentioned earlier is that part of the process, and I think Cassie mentioned this is really about a partnership, and part of the process is that some of these solutions will be tested. And I think the last thing I want to mention is when people think of user testing, they often just think about prototyping testing and, kind of the UX, UI fidelity approach. And I think that is one thing that can definitely be tested. And you can test that through mockups, through A/B testing, sign up pages. But I also just wanted to mention that, feasibility and viability, those are also areas that can be tested. And we also want to see evidence of, kind of a plan. For example, when it comes to data viability, you can do data stress test. You can, test whether it's feasible for people to collect the data. You can test whether the solution can work online, offline, mobile, in the specific conditions. If it's data integrations, testing whether those data integrations work. If it's business partnerships, testing whether there's kind of appetite for business partnerships with viability. I think even in these early phases, if some of your assumptions in the model are around kind of revenue streams or grant funding, I think testing some of that early on, getting pre-commitments from funders or kind of, doing tests to see the willingness to pay of participants. I think these are all kind of, really exciting things that help give more confidence both to you as the innovator as well as to the funder and about the solution. And so I think that's all I have. And yeah, best of luck. I'm really excited to kind of see what ideas that come out.
Thank you so much, Zung. That was really incredible. Really good pointers for, I think, all of the applicants that are considering applying here. Really quickly before we jump into some Q&A, and if you have any burning questions, please enter them in the Q&A portion on the webinar. We'll get to those as soon as we can. There's a couple that have come in. We'll voice those over. But really quickly, we do have a few upcoming webinars that we want to highlight. If you have any additional questions, some of the details we didn't cover here will be covered in these upcoming webinars. So one that's on SMEs in nature, really focusing on the challenges and opportunities for integrating nature into your business strategy. So that's Wednesday, November 19th, in a couple of weeks at 8 a.m. Eastern US time, 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So really, again, highlighting SMEs' experience and how they evaluate, understand their dependencies around nature. So please join us there. If you have any questions, we'll be bringing in some SMEs with that direct experience. And then we mentioned the LEAP approach a few times today, which if you're not familiar with the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD, they developed this approach to really help you evaluate your nature dependencies. And so, or how you should evaluate, how SMEs should evaluate their dependencies. So we have 2 webinars to capture different time zones. We're scheduling them for an hour and a half. If you have any questions on the LEAP approach, this will be a great opportunity for you to join, understand that from a detailed perspective, and then ask questions. And so we'll actually have the TNFD technical team on for that. And that will really help bolster the application, since, one of the key criteria is making sure that the approach is aligned with LEAP. Okay. With that, I'm going to ask Cassie and Zung to come back on, and we can get into some Q&A. So I know that there are, thanks, Cassie, for putting the links to the webinars. So let's see. There's a few questions that I think we've already answered. I do want to voice over. There's a question from Geese around the TRL that we're looking for. What is the TRL? 1 through 3, 4 through 7 or higher. Prototypes are interesting, but might need more time to be developed. So how are these levels factored into the scoring? So I think, so Cassie answered this already. I'll just voice it over. I think TRL right around 3 is probably the minimum. Remember, they're part of the challenge here, part of the whole process of evaluating those finalists is putting the solution into the hands of SMEs. So there's an entire SME user panel that we built to actually test these products. So at the bare minimum, it's got to be something that you're comfortable giving to a potential customer or client that can then take your approach and implement it into their operations. So use that as the guidance. You know, I don't think the TRL, like strict TRL levels or something that we're looking at. It's just got to be something that is deployable, something that you're comfortable with handing off to a potential client and then testing it. And then based on how the testing goes during the SME user panel, we'll be awarding those final $20,000 grand prizes to the 3 top performing applications. So hopefully that answers the TRL question. Anything else you'd like to add there, Cassie or Zung?
No. Well, I think I just said like, yeah, regardless of development stage, all applications will be evaluated against the same criteria. But we do envision supporting like 8 to 10 challenge finalists. And so we recognize that some of them may have different strengths or potential or be at different development stages. And that's like our intention. Like I said, we're trying to identify strong solutions, but also, you know, um, strong like prototypes or teams that can really carry a good innovation or tool forward. So yeah, I wouldn't have applicants like if you have a strong design to like put it forward and not necessarily be discouraged that there may be a bunch of like existing tools out there, but focus on like the strengths of your design.
Awesome. Thanks. And there's a couple of questions about uploading the slides. We will share the slides along with the video. And I think we're working to get it into the chat right now, the folks that are here, so you can access them directly, but give us a few minutes there. Another question that just came in from Lauren, specific to the innovation her organization has in mind. I'm just gonna read it through and then we can. Would a process innovation be eligible for this opportunity? One that utilizes existing tools, activities, data, including mapping farms to deforestation risks and compliance gaps, enhancing internal management systems to help SMEs monitor forest integrity, identifying SMEs at risk of losing market access, and providing targeted support to reach compliance using existing biodiversity tools and remote sensing to evaluate forest cover, carbon storage, etc. Sharing results through simple dashboards and training to generate. I'll just quickly answer. Yes, that sounds like an interesting application. I think just making sure that you are able to communicate how that's delivered to the SME and how the SME will interact with this type of solution, I think is really important to consider in the application. But on the surface, it sounds like a really good idea to me. Any additional comments, Cassie?
Yeah, I think any like viable solution is gonna, you know, almost definitely rely on external data sources. And then, I mean, those external data sources are, you know, collected through, like you said, like through satellites. And so I do see it likely as being a, like the solution being something that like collects a lot of plumbing of like data and yeah, like how making that data like actionable is like the key piece. So I think just also talking about in the feasibility section, how you can like, you know, maintain access to these different sources, you know, like the interoperability of your solution. So, which I think most will have to address and consider. So, thinking about, yeah, the feasibility, continued access, continued reliable access to anything, any external tools or data sets. So.
Awesome. I see another question about from Santosh, something about scaling up of ongoing beekeeping activity in tribal community as an SME business. So I think just if you're asking if that's the kind of application that we're looking for, scaling up this type of beekeeping activity, that's not exactly what we're looking for here. We're looking for, again, understanding what that beekeeping activities dependencies, risks, opportunities are on nature and how they would evaluate that. So how would that beekeeping SME itself understand its nature-related finance or nature-related dependencies. So we're not looking for those types of SMEs themselves, I would say, but we're looking for ways to really help those types of SMEs understand their risks around nature, their dependencies, risks, opportunities on nature. Anything else you'd like to add there?
No, I did just want to reiterate from earlier that someone asked why the deadline was extended, and I wanted to recommunicate that the TNFD team felt strongly that they wanted to offer these Leap Approach webinars. There's one on the 20th and the 24th. It will be the same webinar, so you only need to plan to attend one. They are 90 minutes long, as it is a rigorous methodology. But if you're thinking about applying or not yet familiar with the LEAP approach, it would be potentially useful to attend one of those. That's my word.
Well said. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Again, we'll follow up with the webinar recording and we'll send the slides out to everyone that registered. But I think that's it. So once again, thank you, Cassie. Thank you so much, Zung. I hope everyone enjoyed this webinar. And if you have any other questions, want to learn more, here's a QR code, take you to the website. Feel free to email us. Look forward to hearing your questions and reading through all of your applications. Have a great day, everyone. Cheers. Bye.